Hello, welcome to the Sunday Brunch. My name is Ned, and we have Ben.
Hey.
And today we have a special guest, a friend of mine, Matthew Copple. He's going to be sharing the scene, the airwaves with us. Hi, Matthew.
Hey, how you doing?
Good, thank you. Matthew is a libertarian activist, an armchair philosopher, a Freemason, as well as a Buddhist, pagan, Christian
something or other everything.
Awesomeness. So we're going to talk about
I can relate.
Lots to talk about.
Spiritualist without portfolio.
Yes.
I want to mention that we're doing today's show without our normal producer and editor, Dan Hutchins. We're actually filming on a video camera. I don't think we're going to end up using the video, just the audio. And we're probably going to drive Dan crazy.
This is what you get when you're not here, Dan.
What do we have?
Well, I think for our first topic, we're going to revisit something from last week. We had a comment on my Facebook page from one of our listeners who brought up several points. It was a lengthy comment. We're not going to go into all of it.
We thank you for your comment, Mary Lou.
We're very grateful, Mary Lou, that you took the time to listen and respond. Thank you very much. Point number 4 in her comment, 4 of 6, was this. Ned said we have the right to be rude and mean. Yes, we do. However, what are we expressing when we behave in that manner? Are we bringing into our physical plane that which we really are, pure love and pure joy? Ned, you wanna respond to that?
The answer is no. But the context was, you had a great quote from who? Krishnamurti about when we are patriotic, when we celebrate or get into jingoism of our team versus your team, that's actually an act of violence, and because we're tearing somebody down.
Controversial thought.
Yes. And I wanted to bring during that show, and you can find that show for now in the SoundCloud. That was our episode number 1 from July 6th, 1 week ago. So look for that to get the whole context, people. But I mentioned I make a big distinction between violence of a physical kind, of actually hitting or pointing a gun or a knife at somebody, versus emotional or spiritual violence. And I said, you have the right to be rude, you have the right to call someone names. And I think that Mary Lou made the comment that, why would you want to? That doesn't actually promote your highest self or spirit. And I agree, it doesn't.
Yeah, I don't want to.
I don't. I'm saying you have the right to be a jerk. You have the right to do a lot of things that I don't suggest you do. But I don't want to try to use force to stop you from doing those things.
I can get on board with that. A consistent theme through many of Mary Lou's comments is this idea of being in integrity with our true nature and expressing the love and the joy that we are as spiritual beings. And I think while that's a great ideal and a great aim, it's also somewhat naive to hold that as an expectation for all people to live and behave that way all the time.
And when we talk about rights, we're really talking about your ownership of yourself and your accountability for who you are, right? And violence, something that when I hit you, that is clearly violence. I don't think there's any human in the world who can deny that if I get into your space and break your nose, I have just done violence to you. Mm-hmm. But there are many cases when we are communicating with one another, especially when we have to communicate difficult truths, where the idea of whether is that violence, is that non-violence, it's really hard. How difficult are we going to get? So I think we can make a distinction between saying, as people, of course, we do not want to commit violence in any way. We don't want to do it verbally. We don't want to do it spiritually. We don't want to do it physically. But for things for which we can't make a clear distinction, for things where we can't make something that everybody agrees on, we have to say, you have the right to make that distinction for yourself.
Very interesting, Matthew.
Excellent point, Matthew. And one that I totally agree with. I think when you're talking about violence, the word as it's commonly defined means physical violence. It means hitting or causing harm. But The quote from last week was specifically kind of talking about a more psychological aspect of violence, and the tendency that we have to separate ourselves from each other, to insist on our difference, and how that can lead us then to behave in ways that are hurtful, demeaning, and just generally not helpful or productive.
And if the goal is nonviolence, if the goal is harmony, is compassion, is peaceful interactions, both physical and spiritual, emotional harmony, if that's the goal, what is the method to get there? I don't know. I don't have all those answers, but I do know, I do strongly believe the method to get there is not through violence.
I'm very much in the same boat.
It's not through force. I'm going to force you
To be nonviolent.
to be nonviolent emotionally and physically. So, beyond that, I have ideas about how to get there.
Matthew, I loved your point about ownership of self. And one of the key components of that, in me standing up into my own freedom and independence, is allowing other people to have their own freedom.
Exactly.
And to be themselves and say what they feel and what they want, and to allow that not to affect me, I think, is the ideal. I find freedom when I am able to just observe other people's decisions and other people's actions and choices and let them be without being dragged into it, without being affected by it.
And that gets back to the equanimity, the being okay with it, to be, I guess you would say, at peace with it. Noticing it, what's going on, that person is being a jerk, but that doesn't affect me. That doesn't need to ruin my day.
So it is entirely an interior process that each one of us finds peace and cultivates nonviolence for ourselves. No one else can do it for you. You can maybe be shown the rules, have the principles demonstrated for you, but it is entirely my decision whether or not I'm going to do that introspective work, whether I'm going to look at my own attachments, my own reactions, and begin to kind of take apart the programming of violence that sometimes we are raised with.
I think you had a great comment last week when you talked about equanimity amidst iniquity.
And you know what? And that I think we could use as a tagline for our show.
It is a good one.
Because violence often does come from excessive attachment. Not just to things, to intangible things as well, to ideas. We've got issues all over the world where we have wars which are not over. Men have fought over women, men have fought over land. Now today we seem to like to fight over ideas which really don't even have a tangible existence, right? Your idea of God versus my idea of God. Your idea of freedom versus my idea of freedom. And we're so attached to those things that any perceived infringement upon it we perceive as a threat and therefore have a defensive response.
Well, I think people have been fighting over ideas for a long time. Take the Middle East, for example.
Very good choice.
Look at you, segue people here. Right into our next topic. Look at you. Israel-Palestine conflict is next on the board here.
What are we, 6 days into some serious violence and bombing over there? And
really intense, apparently, for the past 6 or 7 days of. So today is July 13th, 2014, and there have been periods of this, and of course, in the conflict between the nation of Israel and Palestine. Well, so I don't know what is showing up on the news. If you guys watch the mainstream media, TV, or any of that
I tend to float around. I don't have cable at home at this point. Having a kids get too addicted to that sort of thing. But I do get onto the, CNN websites and stuff. And
I suspect is what they're showing is like this is a conflict between two equal sides, equal powers.
they do.
And there might be some people hurt on both sides. When in reality, it's more like a huge mammoth bully beating up a little kid. Israel, the state of Israel, being the one that has all arms, money, and bombs from the United States. Palestine being, being little strips of land, people regulated off. I think of Palestine as Native Americans, and when American settlers, the U.S. government pushing them further and further away into smaller and smaller pockets, and when they occasionally would rise up to try to defend themselves, they would be met with a huge military might pushing them through physical violence, starvation, all sorts of stuff. So I think, over the past week, there's been, last I heard, 180 Palestinians killed and 1,000 to 2,000 injured. There have been a handful of Israelis injured, none killed. So it's pretty clearly an unequal, conflict.
Yeah, it's never a fair or an equal fight between a nation with a $1 billion professional military complex in place and a group of rebels who have no state funding, who have no real resources to speak of. It's not a fair fight at all. I think when Israel bombs the Palestinians, they're doing it with state-of-the-art equipment, and I think that when Palestinians respond with their rockets, we're talking some pretty makeshift kind of explosive devices here. We're not talking the latest state-of-the-art intercontinental ballistic missiles that nations would fight each other with. These are things that they're able to scrape together with their meager resources to put up some kind of defense.
I do think Hamas has some much more advanced weaponry now than they did the last time we had an issue like this, in that now they're able to basically reach cities in the north of Israel. The only thing I would say here is, you can really get into a long discussion about who started what, bigger versus smaller, but what you really got underneath here is one of these conflicts of extremes. There are genuine problems that both sides have.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What is startling to me and very disturbing to me is the disproportionality of the conflict. It's the same thing that has bothered me about past American conflicts too. The disproportionality of it. Okay, so you kill 10 of us, we kill 10,000 of you, and then you come and kill another, or in this case in 9/11, 3,000. But we've got this thing in Israel, so we've got rockets going. Very few people have been killed. Although, okay, if you have to live in a southern border town, let's be honest here, you're living in a southern border town and every day 3 or 4 rockets are hitting, that's got to take a toll on you psychologically. It certainly does. That is violence against them.
No doubt.
And the Israelis have spent a lot of money trying to cut down on the lethality of these things, trying to make defenses, getting people to shelters. That's things the Palestinians can't do. There's too many of them, too small of a place.
Sure, really
Mm-hmm. Densely populated. So part of this is just, a matter of geography and tactics. But what's underneath this is extremism. Mm-hmm. You've got the settler movement in Israel, which says all of Palestine will be ours regardless.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got the extremist Muslim movements in Palestine, which say we will not rest until we have kicked the Israelis into the sea. Mm-hmm. Now, where is there a compromise there? How can you get a compromise between one side that says I'm going to kick you in the sea and the other side that says I'm going to kick you into the sea?
Mm-hmm.
Great question. Why don't we wrap this up and come back to it, touch on it in the second half?
Excellent.
Yep, we need to take a short break and we'll be right back with more great stuff.
You're listening to the Sunday Brunch. Bow.